furniture, and molten silver fell through, and because of the way it was folded, the marks across from each other are very similar across the cloth. So you wait in the line, start taking photographs. Doesn't look like much. Think, well, maybe I'll remember it later. And you get home, and you, I don't know how this will work with digital photos, but you get your photos back, and that's what your photo says. You go, wow, is that what I was looking at? I was looking at that. Now, I've switched to slides, but I lined up that spear wound over on the right side. I lined it up. If this were the way you really took it, it wouldn't be like that. It'd be like this. On the shroud, there's a left to right reversal and a light darkness reversal. So that on the image that appears to the naked eye, what's dark, like the blood stain going down the bridge of the nose, it's light over there. The blood in the upper beard portion is light over there. Notice the backwards three-shaped blood stain on the forehead here. The three is the right way here. That's what your photograph would look like. Again, I flipped them around when I put them on, but now the beard looks like it goes down. It looks like it goes only down as far as that wrinkle. It's a very ancient wrinkle. You're going to be able to see this. The blood follows the wrinkle, the cloth. But the beard actually goes down to here, which you're going to be able to see very clearly in a later photo. This is 16th century painting, and I include this for a couple of reasons. One, to say that that's a good picture of how the man in the shroud was thought to be buried. And secondly, look how old the image is. It's old enough that in the 16th century, the image was still available with the burn marks. That's the burn marks going. Okay, I mentioned this briefly the other day. One of the main things you have to answer is the carbon dating of 1988. I was lecturing in Oxford at the time, and the carbon dating had been done in 3 labs: Oxford University, a lab in Switzerland, and either Arizona or Arizona State. And one of my students said, "Here today, the shroud had been proved fake." And I said, "No way." "Yeah, shroud's fake." So we lectured like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and took trips around England on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we were in London very soon afterwards. And sure enough, here's the newspapers for sale there. And it says, front page, shroud's a fake. And the date is 13th to 14th century AD. And I can tell you from having co-authored 2 books in the shroud, and my co-author is one of the scientists who did the investigation, everything went dead. Our first book was 1981, our second book was 1990. But when this carbon dating report came out, science is held in such esteem in our society that when the carbon dating report came out, we didn't get any more speaking engagements asking about the shroud. People didn't want to talk about it. Ha ha, you're the idiots that defended the shroud and so on. And you said, I guess you have that coming. But you wonder, what about this carbon-14 thing? Well, I'm going to give you a couple arguments here against carbon-14. Today it's been, I think it's fair to say it's been totally discredited. And one of the indications is this article here by the chief chemist on the shroud team, Ray Rogers, from Los Alamos National Laboratory and University of California. This Thermochemica Acta is a secular, peer-reviewed chemical journal, and the title Studies on the Radiocarbon Sample from the Shroud of Turin. This is taken from the abstract, you know, the paragraph deal at the beginning of the manuscript. In 1988, they did testing. The result was the shroud was dated somewhere between 1260 and 1390 with 95% confidence. This prompted questions about the validity of the sample. Preliminary estimates indicated much older age for the cloth. And then the red. Observations proved the radiocarbon sample was not part of the original cloth of the Shroud of Turin. The radiocarbon date was thus not valid for determining the age of the shroud. All right. Ray's a chemist. He puts these things under an electron microscope, and his argument was very simple. The cloth that was used in the 1988 C14 and the cloth that was used in the 78 investigation are quite simply different cloths. They're chemically different. Somebody screwed up, don't know who, but we've got threads from the image area, 1978. We've got threads from the outline image, 1988, but they are different cloths chemically. Straightforward scientific argument. This is not this when it comes to the chemistry of the cloth.
Is that because the repairs made to the cloth after the fire?
Yes, there are different kinds of repairs on the cloth. And we have these different kinds of repairs today. You come home on a Sunday afternoon, you go out to church, your parents told you to change your clothes before you go out to play baseball. One day you forgot, slid into second base, tore your knee on your best pants. Mom's got a choice. Go to the store and get some thread that matches your pants and try to do what's called an invisible weave and do it as delicately as you can so people can't see the tear, or put an iron-on patch over it and your church pants are now your playpants. Well, both kinds of patches are in the shroud. Iron-on patch sort of thing, the big ones, all that was in those days was sew-on patch, and little tiny invisible weave. Ray's estimate was, can't exactly tell you what you did, what the mistake was, but I think he estimated that the sample cloth taken at 88 was 60% the original date of the cloth, whatever that is, and 40% medieval. So that's going to skew the finding. Like I said, this is not a I think or I really like the shroud, so I'm going to defend it type argument. It's a chemical argument from what the thread looks like under the microscope, and they are simply different. They're not the same cloth. So that's one argument. This one, in a way, is kind of more fun. This argument says a lot of people in the early church believed that when they painted the face of Jesus, when they painted the shroud, they thought they're painting the face of Jesus. And so there's a lot of odd things on the shroud image that are reproduced in the paintings. And you say, well, how do you know the shroud didn't copy the paintings? Well, because there's no reason to put these odd things in the paintings. The only way to explain some of these things is if they were first in the cloth, not in the painting. Let me give you an idea here of what I mean. The beard, as I said, looks like it comes down right in here. It looks like it's double pointed and it's off center. Okay, there's the middle of the face, and this part of the beard is pushed over a little bit. Looks like a short beard and off center. Notice double peak beard, off center. Why is it off center? It's off center over here. This wouldn't, there's no reason to put a painting to have the beard off center. It's more likely if you think that's Jesus. Now, this is my favorite one. The beard actually goes down to here. And there's two lines across the bottom of the beard. Well, I mean, I don't know what this is. If I'm the painter, I have already got the beard up here. But this is something. So if I'm going to, if I'm going to mimic Jesus, let's get the lines down there across the neck, right there. So we'll just put a few lines in the throat. And that's what I mean about this is only explicable if this is copying this, not the other way around. Another favorite is the triangle between the eyes. Who knows what it is? A lot of discussion of that. Could be a watermark, could be anything. Well, since that's Jesus, let's put a triangle between the eyes. Put a line across there, and let's get that triangle in there. The eyes look abnormally large. That's because there's image fallout area, so we'll make the eyes really large, and we'll give him a few wrinkles under his eyes and whatnot to sort of answer the question of what fills in that gap. Notice the hair looks like it's parted down the middle, falls down the side. It disappears behind the right shoulder, but further up than on the left shoulder. So we'll shorten the hair up on the right side and make it go behind the right shoulder and make this hair longer. After all, that's Jesus, and we want this to be authentic. So there's just a lot of strange things. The hair exactly the same way, the triangle, the double peaked beard off center, and crazy lines going across the neck. Why do you feel you've got to put those lines there?
What's the dating on that painting? Do we know that?
That one there, I believe, is 10th century, which notice that predates carbon dating by a few centuries. But it's going to get even better here in a minute. This is the famous painting piece of art in St. Catherine's at the down in the south of Israel, the Sinai Peninsula. Very famous icon, it would be called. And notice some of the same things. Now, not a double pointed beard, but notice the short beard. Let's get the lines across the throat, further down. Can't quite see it because the way the light is shining, but there's that triangle between the eyes. Same kind of large eyes. Look at the hair disappearing behind the right shoulder, but coming down further on the left side, etc. This is 6th century A.D.
Whoa.
6th century. So the shroud can't be 1260 if a painter thought he was painting the shroud 6 centuries earlier. I'm not saying that that's Jesus in the cloth, you understand? I'm just saying if he's painting the shroud and it looks like this comes from the shroud and not vice versa, carbon dating is false. It's a bad move.
What's the previous painting?
It's Christ Pantocrator, this one?
No, the first one? Yeah.
I don't know where that's from, to tell you the truth. It's Byzantine, but I'm not sure where it's from.
Dr. Habermas?
That's from the Sinai Peninsula. Yes?
The way you started this presentation, you said if we went in to see the shroud now, you don't see an image.
You don't see what?
You don't see an image in the shroud. Or you take a picture and then you can see the image?
Because the image depicts the photograph as a left-right light-darkness reversal from the shroud to your photo.
So are you saying 2,000 years ago there was an image then to be seen?
We don't know how far the image goes back, but it was probably there for, it was there in the 16th century painting. How much further back?
So it's gone away. The image is
It's faded over time?
faded over time.
Unfortunately, the image is disappearing, and they're estimating that in 100 years there'll be no image. That's why if you line up afterwards and you want to buy these photos from me, actually, they're not mine, they're copyrighted by other people, so that'd be a lot of trouble. All right, so this is probably even neater. All right, 3 pictures of the shroud, backlit so that they all look kind of gold. This is a Roman coin, a gold coin. This is the face on the shroud, and this is an overlay of the face of the shroud on the coin to show you how close they are. Today, in a court of law, if you rob a convenience store, and all we have is your high school picture, and now you're 27, and we've got the picture in the convenience store, you have to have points of congruence between the two faces to convict you in a court of law. and I understand they require 40 to 70 points of congruence from photograph experts. These coins, there's a series of them done in the Roman Empire. These coins have between 70 and 200 marks of congruence, which says this is this. This is this. This was done from this to the tune of 70 to 200 points of congruence. Now, this is a Roman coin, and it says something like Lord of Lords across the coin. I think it's the first time Jesus has been depicted on a coin. It's a very, very, very small, I've seen an original, a very, very small coin, smaller than a dime.
Wow.
And it's gold. There's a number of these. And just about all of them are minted between 592 and 610 AD. So, along with this, these pictures these images are real early and predate the Shroud carbon dating, 88 carbon dating by centuries. So it doesn't look like there's much truth to the C14. And I'll tell you the latest. This came out the week before Easter, if you caught it. A university in Italy, Padua University, their department of laser technology or something like that, they used a different dating technique, and it's not as specific as C14, but they dated the Shroud and gave it a wide range. The Shroud was dated from 300 BC to 200 AD, a 500-year window, 300 BC to 200 AD. And, I mean, obviously that puts it within the range. Also, you heard about the carbon-14 from 88, which you probably didn't hear, that there was another carbon-14 from 82, and it was a private date. People didn't talk about it for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is the scientists did not get permission to do it, but they did it anyway. I think it was done right here. I think it was done at Caltech. You know what the two dates were on this thread? 30 AD and 70 AD, plus or minus.
Wow.
And when the guy gave him the results back, he even said to them, I don't trust the 70 AD yet because there was some gunk on the cloth and I couldn't purify it completely. So you've got three datings. The one that gets the biggest press is the 14th century, but the other two have a 500-year window, which the rest of which Jesus' life is apart, and another another normal specific dating, which puts it smack dab in the middle of Jesus' life. But again, Ray Rogers' argument is the patch they used in 88 was totally skewed. It didn't represent the date of the clock. Yes?
Whose currency is this?
Whose what?
Currency.
The coin.
Roman.
And what was the dates? 592 to
So
610?
I think it's like 592 to 608, 610, right in there. And now that I've said that, I think it's 1500, no. Okay, let me, I need to go back and check my source. It's either 592 to 608 or 692 to 708. But regardless, still centuries before what it has to be. Yeah, you know, I think it is 692 to 708. It's the very end of the 7th century, beginning of the 8th century, but still, remember the date, carbon 14, 1260, on into the 1300s. Oh, and notice several things. Notice something in the coin. Notice how the hair goes behind the right shoulder, comes out the left shoulder. Notice at the bottom of the beard, notice the two lines down the throat.
Yeah.
That's just intriguing. Why do you put the triangle between the eyes, too? I'm like, that's just like weird. But it's very explicable if you think you're painting the face of Jesus. Steve?
So, it makes sense to me, all of kind of the strange similarities you're talking about with the hair and the triangle and stuff, but, I mean, is there, is there opposition to stuff like this? They liken it to like seeing Jesus on garlic bread or something. I mean,
No, I mean, what do you do?
I mean, is this? Yeah.
What do you do with an overlay technique with one up here, which has 70 to 200 points of congruence, which stands in a court of law? And,
I'm sorry, how many
and just really strange things, like the two lines in the throat, the short beard when the beard is really longer, the triangle, the hair behind it.
So is there, that makes sense to me.
Right.
Is there, I guess,
I don't know
scholarly
of any critical,
opposition?
I don't know of any critical comebacks.
Okay.
Except maybe like, well, just be like you Christians to say anything whatsoever to save your precious artifact here. Well, you're not answering the objection. I don't know any comebacks that say, yeah, that can't be, or I'm not aware of any criticism. Yes.
I'm not going to go through it now because you're already going to plan on it later, but could you explain why people think it's the bear cloth of Jesus? Like, that they took the cloth and they put it in the church, and then, like, the process that
So you mean, how could it be Jesus as opposed to perhaps another crucifixion victim?
Well, I just know, like, the church in Turin has, okay, the cloth was transferred to this church, and we got it from that church, and there's a fire in that church, but now we have possession of it. You know this backstory of, like, how the church got to the church.
Provenance.
Or what
What's
are
the
the
provenance?
sources of where it came from?
Why is that an issue?
I'm not saying it's an issue, I'm just asking.
He's looking for the background on it. How did it get
Why
there?
did the church believe that this was the shroud of Jesus?
Oh, yeah. The leading theory on history was done in 1978, real early in the discussions, by an Oxford historian journalist by the name of Ian Wolfson. And he put together a path for the shroud that says the shroud was taken by Thaddeus, the disciple of Jesus. There's a legend to this effect, and part of it's reported by Eusebius, that the cloth was taken up to Constantinople, Istanbul. Actually, it was taken to Edessa first, which is a kingdom in southwestern Turkey, and to heal a person named Abgar, who was a king. He was sick. He thought that if he could touch the cloth of Jesus, he'd be healed. So it was taken up there. And then because of the Muslims destroying Christian icons, it was hidden in a wall for hundreds of years. It was sealed hermetically in a wall, like cinder blocks. And it began to be taken out around 1000 AD and shown on display. And it shows up again in Western Europe, and it's believed to have been taken to Western Europe by the Knights Templar, that very mysterious, they get blamed for everything in the Middle Ages. But they were a group of warrior priests. They were like men of the cloth who were trained as knights. And they were pretty, they could be very nasty. And they, went that way on the Crusades and returned with it. And the shroud, as far as we know, has not been out of France, Switzerland, or northern Italy since the 16th century. So that's probably the most repeated historical trip.
What was the name of the researcher in
Ian-
1978?
Ian Wolfson wrote a book published by Doubleday called Shroud of Turin. I'll be honest with you, try to be all the time, of course. There's some disagreement among the scientists about this, but what a number of them think you're seeing here, we're zeroing in on the right eye of the man in the shroud. This is not in all the shroud photographs. It's kind of interesting the way it shows up in some photographs and not others. This is a lepton, sort of like the widow's mite. And there's a staff there in the middle and some Greek lettering. There's another picture of a lepton. I don't know why it's off my slide there, but That may or may not be a staff right there in the right. That's the right eye of the man in the shroud. But look up at the top, what look like letters. It looks like, and what it says over there off the screen, it says UCAI, transliterated. That is part of the name Tiberius Caesar on the coin. And now they're up to like 7 letters, those who buy this theory. See the other little squigglies outside the UCAI? They think they're up to some other deals now. But here's the problem. Josh McDowell's a good friend of mine, but he wrote an essay in '82 or something making fun of people who thought the shroud was authentic. And he said, this can't be the shroud of Jesus. If that's Tiberius Caesar, they misspelled his name. The C should be a K, and that's correct. The C should be a K for Tiberius Caesar, if you transliterate it. Well, guess what? Since that time, they have found a half dozen other leptons with the same misspelling of Tiberius Caesar's name, a C instead of a K. That one kind of jumped up and bit him. I remind him of that when I see him. I asked him if he wants to debate me sometime. He says he's not interested in debating. I think he's not interested in the shroud anymore. But anyway, that needs to be explained. There's some other things that need to be explained. I'll show you in a few minutes a photograph of a scientist taking some sticky tape samples off the bottom of the feet of the man in the shroud.
Can I ask you a quick question? Are those letters on the shroud, or are those letters just on a coin or something that you just showed us? That's what I'm not tracking.
The right side is the shroud image. UCAI. This is image enhancement, so you can read what's under the cloth. Anyway, this guy's taking samples off the feet. Well, there's blood on the bottom of the feet, as you can imagine. There's also dirt on the bottom of the feet. The dirt is a species of limestone. This has been written up in a peer-reviewed secular chemical journal. The dirt on the bottom of the feet is limestone found almost exclusively in Jerusalem. Oh, I didn't even tell you what this was. And that's what you're looking at, a lepton, right there with Tiberius Caesar's name. What this is? If that's what it is, it's a lepton of Pontius Pilate minted between 29 and 32 A.D.
Oh my God.
I didn't bring my slide with pollen, but they've also discovered pollen from a half dozen plants at least that are extinct. And the shroud hasn't been out of Western Europe in its modern history. The plants are extinct. They grew almost exclusively from Jerusalem down to the Dead Sea. And the pollen's on the cloth. So think about, if this is a lepton of Pontius Pilate, think about dirt from Jerusalem. Think about pollen from Jerusalem. And if you're faking this, if you crucified some poor soul to look like Jesus, first of all, why do you put a coin on the eyes? Nobody can see it when you put the cloth over top. In the Middle Ages, nobody can see the coin. Secondly, would you go to Palestine and try to get A, Palestinian dirt, B, Palestinian pollen, and C, would you try to get a coin when there's some epistemic problems too? Would you know a lepton of Pontius Pilate if you saw it in 1250? How far advanced was numismatics? I don't know, but the point is you don't need any of this, because once you cover the body with the cloth, you can't see the dirt, you can't see the pollen. They had nothing to see pollen with. And, what about the coin?
So, just so I'm following, the coin, it's thought that the coin was on the eye and on the shroud as an impression of?
Underneath the cloth.
Okay, I got it.
And putting coins on the eyes or over the mouth is largely thought of as a pagan custom, but there have been other coins found, by the way, inside Jewish skulls in ancient Jewish cemeteries, where they put it over the mouth or over the eye. You say, well, did you say it was pagan? Well, there's a couple possibilities here. first of all, they could simply have used it as we've used as recently, I understand, as World War II, where they put pennies over the eyes of dead soldiers to keep the eyelids shut. It could be just something as simple as that. Or, if, you know, I told you yesterday, I gave you a little bit of my argument. You want to make a point for the Roman soldiers, which no critics accept. But if Romans were connected with this at all, a Roman could have put the coins over the eyes and the mouth were used as passage over the Styx River. So that's why it's a pagan custom. But you could also, like I said, just try to close the eyelids. This to me is like the symbol of contemporary shroud study. This is John Jackson. He's probably the best known shroud researcher, theoretical physicist, PhD, Air Force Academy professor. See, most of the shroud testing started in several laboratories. The Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, the Los Alamos Lab in Albuquerque, and the Air Force University. And in the Air Force Academy, 4 fellows were in a carpool, a famous carpool. 2 were Orthodox, very conservative Catholics. One was a Protestant, a Baptist, and one was an agnostic. And they were in a carpool together, and they cooked up this idea of testing the shroud. Well, my co-author, Ken Stevenson, a professor at the Academy, was one of the 4 guys in the carpool. So, coming to me to ask me to get involved with them is because my work, my research on the resurrection was kind of sectionally strange how Ken and I got together, but so the story. So, John is sitting here on the stool going over last minute, talking to the 35-ish, the number varied, 35 men and women who are for the next week stretching out the table, stretching out the shroud on the table behind John. They are trying to do a plethora of tests, of non-destructive testing to tell everything they can do. They took thousands and thousands of photographs, ultraviolet, infrared, just to test all kinds of things. Now, the guy sitting on the stool is with the checked shirt there. That's John. This is his sidekick. These 2 guys are always connected with shroud studies in the 70s. That's Eric Jumper. You can see it on his name tag. Eric was also a professor at the Air Force Academy. And they are separating the shroud from the backing here, and they're trying to answer one of their favorite questions. Notice the guy in the far left is one of several scientific photographers on the team. That's Vernon Miller. He was professor of photography at the Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara. And the guy on the right is an Italian scientist. They're taking the backing off the shroud. It was sewed on by the nuns. And they're trying to answer the question, does the shroud image go through the back? Now, there is an image on both sides of the cloth, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if the image on the top went through to the bottom. And the blood stains, as you can imagine, are contact stains. The blood stains go all the way through. The image stains do not. And you will see that pretty carefully here in a photo I have in just a matter of moments. This is a physicist, another physicist, Sam Pellicore from the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena. He's doing microscopic work on the face. How can you tell? Well, you get used to seeing the cloth here, and notice where the hands are crossed down there on the mid left-hand side. He's working the face area. I don't know, they must not have had hair and beard rules at the JPL, but this is also 70s, you know, so he's got his flower power shirt on here, so, you know, who knows? You'd think he was a street guy or something, but he's a scientist. Here's a fellow with taking the samples of dirt off the feet. That's a special tape made by Kodak for these fellows to use sticky tape samples from the leaded cloth. This looks like it would be infrared or something, but these are actually ultraviolet photos. Get an idea there what the shroud looks like stretched across the table. More testing. Now, these 2 photos, are image enhanced. They are not the normal, they're not the color of the shroud image normally. But what they did was they enhanced the shroud image so that everything the same density as blood shows up red. And one thing that this shows you is that, you know, in a lot of paintings of the shroud, there are 5 with Jesus. There are 5 major wounds, 2 hands, 2 feet aside. But you can see the carnage on the cloth, how badly this man was beaten. He's got contusions under both his eyes. His eyes are swollen, almost shut. See the blood going down the nose. It makes the nose look abnormally long, but there's actually a blood stain right at the bottom of the nose, which makes the nose look longer. The mustache, the bleeding goes into the mustache. It looks like some of the many medical doctors that have studied these slides, you know, Quincy, CSI, that kind of stuff. They believe that it's very possible that one of the blows ripped his lip up to his nose. You can see the blood that makes it look like a double-pointed beard, but it's not. That's the blood flow. Notice it's filled this little gully. That wrinkle's got to be an ancient wrinkle. And notice the blood goes down to the bottom. I'm sorry, the beard goes down to the bottom with blood throughout it. The squiggly marks here are all over the body. You can see this person's been whipped on the entire surface of his body, with the exception of his face, his forearms, and his feet. He's been whipped everywhere else. You see the 2 blood flows going up the arm, and notice that you can't see the right wrist. It's covered by the left hand. But notice you can see the V-shaped blood flow going up both the arms. That's because it's believed that when another argument for asphyxiation, when you move up and down to free your lungs, the blood takes a different path as it comes down. You create a new path for the blood flow. Okay, it looks like the blood is on the wrist. It is. Virtually every medical researcher thinks I'll show you a picture of it, but thinks that the nail goes through the wrist. Say, well, I thought the New Testament said that nail went through the hand. Well, not a problem with the Greek. A lot of times, many times, 4 words for love. A lot of times the Greek is more exact than English. This one isn't. The word for hand is kind of a generic term in Greek. There's no Greek word for wrist. And so if it's wrist, you call it hand. So saying it's hand doesn't solve the issue. In fact, someone's told me I need to go check this. I always say that. I haven't checked it in many years. That's kind of immaterial to me. But someone told me that in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, one of the words for hand is used for a mid-arm range. So it doesn't solve the issue. And so in steps medical science, and they say that a nail here with an adult male would rip out, would not hold the body. So you'll see in a minute where they place this nail that would hold much more than the weight of an adult male body if it were placed where they think. This is a photo micrograph, and it's a close-up of the linen cloth. I asked earlier, what about the stains? They go all the way through. The blood stains go through. The image stage are those silvery marks in the middle. Now, this is obviously, a huge close-up of a thread here. These threads could be made up of 200 fibrils per thread. And the shroud image, like this right here, this one right here, the shroud image does not even go deeper than 1 fibril. It's not even on the back of the top fibril, which is incredible because the image creating techniques we know today, this is one of the, maybe number 3 on the chart of things that it's very difficult to reproduce. They cannot make a shroud. They can make a shroud that looks visibly, they can fake a shroud that looks visibly like the Shroud of Turin today, but the chemistry and the physics would be off. And this is one of the ones that's very hard to explain. This would be number 2. I used to say this was number 1, hardest to explain, but now something that I'll show you that's come up more lately is the most intriguing part of the shroud, I think. When the guys at the Air Force Academy took a photo of the shroud and put it in a computer known as a VP-8 image analyzer, it was used for Voyager space shots. And the point of a VP-8 image analyzer is to show cloth-to-body distance. Well, it wasn't made to show cloth-to-body distance, but it would be shown from the Voyager to the planet. It incorporates distance in the photo, distance information. And when they put photos of your face or my face in the VP-8 image analyzer, it would look horrible. The eyes would bug out, the nose would sink in, it would be contorted. It wouldn't be a 3D image. When they put image of the shroud in there, it comes out 3D. When I first flew down to Ken and left the Air Force Academy, and he was the second youngest B-52 bomber pilot in Vietnam. So he became a Learjet pilot for IBM. And I flew down to New Orleans and walked into his house and turned left to go to his living room. And he had this 6-foot tall, it's not an artist's conception, this is the image readout on cardboard of the VP-8 image analyzer. And the image of the shroud is 3D. Now, here's why this is, well, the first time I ever saw this, I totally misunderstood what they were saying. I just thought, yeah, that's weird. Yeah, one more weird thing on the shroud. Their point isn't, this is weird. There's something here that's very significant. And what the VP-8 image analyzer shows is that there's cloth-to-body distance. So the cloth would come over the head like this, and it would touch the high points of the body, the forehead, the nose, the chin, but not the sides of the face, not the throat, chest, not the rib cage. Left arm's crossed over the right arm, so the left arm would be prominent, the right arm less so. Now, the left foot, the left knee is popped back up. He's in state of rigor mortis. By the way, his head is frozen forward like this. And you may have noticed this in the 16th century painting. Notice one of the men had Jesus' head lying on his leg. I think they're trying to account for the fact that the head's forward like this. So they put it on the guy's leg. But actually, when he's in the tomb, his head's forward too. It's frozen in that, the last stance there. And the right knee is popped up, and left knee is popped up, and the left foot is frozen toward the right foot in rigor mortis. So they think probably they crossed the left foot over the right foot. There's a lot of ways you can crucify with a single nail affixing both feet. Okay, so the cloth would be on the left arm, less so on the right arm, much less so on the rib cage. Be on the left knee, not so much on the right knee, because there's going to be image fallout. It's not like that. Parts of the body are represented. That's what 3D shows. Parts of the body are represented where the body did not touch the cloth. So whatever creates the image has to jump across space of a few centimeters. It's that's what 3D indicates. That it's getting on the cloth in areas that didn't touch. That's the value of 3D. And this, of all things we've mentioned so far, this one cannot be duplicated. There's no way anybody's successfully duplicated something that when you put it, there are still a few operating VP-8 image analyzers. You can imagine in the 70s, they're all computers today. But there's still some operating ones. And when you put photographs in there, you can check them to see if the artwork you've done looks like it's reproduced the shroud. And no one yet has been able to do that. This is a model of the dreaded Roman Flagrant. Those dumbbell-shaped pieces of lead were sometimes sharpened on the ends. They were designed on contact to gouge out pieces of human flesh, to cut nerves, bone, whatever was in their way. And they're nasty. When I first went to see Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, I knew that he had used the shroud for one of his sources for Jesus' whipping. And so when they had Jesus stretched over the low piece of wood there and stretched him out with them, I knew they were gonna kick him over or he was gonna roll over, because in the shroud, he's whipped all over his chest, all over his stomach. You knew they were gonna get him on the front as well as on the back. And of course, that's what you see here with this instrument. That's a drawing here, but that's a close-up of the flagrum wounds in the back. In the back, they're far more prominent. You can see them here. This is more to scale. You can see that he's either been made to carry a heavy object and or rubbed up against a heavy object, and it happened after the beating because the scapular region of the back has been smeared by something. You see the squiggly marks all over. This is from the blood from the right chest, and I guess when they take them down and or tip the body sideways to put it in a tomb, the blood didn't flow across the back. And you'll see a close-up of the chest wound here in a minute. But there's blood and water. I mean, there's a watery substance in the blood, but the chief pathologist, who, by the way, was one of the counselors, I understand, for the old Quincy program. He was the Robert Buckland, the chief pathologist on the team, was L.A. County coroner. And he said the watery substance is much more clear along the back. He wrote a postscript for our first book, which made some of the scientists kind of upset with him. But he said, some of us have been bold enough to say that what we see on the shroud is evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And if you remind me, I'll tell you what that is when we get to the point. Here's his legs. Look how merciless the Roman soldiers are. They're whipping his calves, thighs, and the scientists who study this can tell that there were probably two men who did the whipping. One was significantly taller than the other one, and one was probably left-handed. That's how exact.
And it's excessive whipping.
Pardon?
I've heard that there was some punishment was more severe than others. Does this show that how many times somebody would get crucified, they would get whipped half as much? Or?
Yeah, well, this guy would be almost dead from the beating. You have to allow, from the marks you see, and you have to guess how many more there would be if they were spaced the same way in areas that are burned, like on the shoulders. But the estimate is that there's about 120 whipping marks. Now, if you divide by 3, it often falls in sets of 3. So I think that there could be 3 lead weights. If you divide 120 by 3, it would be in the neighborhood of 40 lashes with those with the flagrant. Artist's conception of where the nails were put in this man's situation. You could see the left foot over the right foot because the rigor mortis freezes the foot in that direction. Here's a close-up of the hands. You can see the blood flow on the right arm, but you can't see the wound in the right wrist. Now, we're getting close here to discussing the last of the 3 mysteries, and what is my favorite one and what's taken a lot of people's attention. And it was spawned by the recognition by some critics. They'd say, yeah, this shows you the shroud is a fake because the fingers are abnormally long for a man this tall. By the way, how tall is he? He's 5'9", 5'10", 175, 180 pounds. And he's in very good shape. You can see definition, chest and stomach and so on. And he's in good physical shape. But the fingers are too long for a person of that size. And so critics would say, yeah, I mean, that's just an indication that the shroud somehow is a fake. And so they kept studying this, and I'll show you what they've come up with to explain the fingers here. But first, here's the artist's conception of where the spear went in between the fifth and sixth rib through the pericardium into the heart. Here's a close-up of the blood and watery serum, and then notice it goes under the patch. That's where it goes down the back. Okay. One of the doctors on the team took this overlay of a skeleton of a hand to compare it to the hand on the cross in a cloth, let's say. And what it appears is the fingers look abnormally long because you're seeing the bones in the back of the hand. You're seeing these bones up in here, which make the fingers look extremely long. Why are you seeing those? Because this image from several tests, this has been out there for 30 years, but the latest test was just made known just before Easter, that this image is caused by two different kinds of radiation. Radiation from a dead body. And so what you're looking at is something coming out from the body, taking the image with it, transporting the bones out and onto the cloth. That's why the fingers look so large. Now, this is I think, the absolute coolest thing on the shroud, and impossible to, as far as I know, explain. So here's the man in the shroud. You're looking through the face, and you see these little things right here? Those are teeth, complete with roots. So you're seeing teeth. They've counted 23 of them. They've taken this to a professor of dental surgery at Duke Medical School, and the guy said, this is one of the best dental x-rays I've ever seen. And he said, let me tell you why. And then I had an oral surgeon just recently in Louisville explain this to me. He said, we take it for granted that the dentist is going to get a good photo of your tooth. But he said the teeth are very, very hard to x-ray because they're on a round surface. And if you're not careful, you're going to get this stupid looking picture where the teeth in front are going to be huge and the ones at the side are going to be little tiny things instead of the kind of uniform picture. So they put an apparatus inside your mouth and the x-ray on the outside to kind of keep it in balance. But this is like no x-ray we know. It's columnated. Now it goes straight up and down. We don't have x-rays that go straight up and down. The art of x-ray reading is to read the good stuff in the middle of the garbage because there's a lot of background stuff. You get really good at reading this. And this fellow from Louisville, the oral surgeon, said, in order to get a good shot of teeth like that, he said, I would have to put a ball that large inside your mouth to level this out and get that picture. He would just, when he saw that, he would just thrill. He said, that's an x-ray of teeth. So, because of this photo, a lot of work's been done on this, but because of that photo, what they're saying is this person who is dead and crucified has x-rays, a light coming out of his body, impregnating the picture on the cloth. And, people shake their head. We don't have anything like this in any archaeology. There are hundreds of burial garments in existence. None of them have body images. Most you ever see is like decomposition of blood stains. But nothing like this. And the teeth are just best of all. So let me show you what this guy did, this medical doctor. Got a photo of a skull here. And look how the teeth in the shroud just come right around and match the teeth in the skull here. That's the shroud. Kind of eerie, huh? So in a way, you're seeing not just the teeth, you're seeing one reason this photo looks a little like Halloweenish, the shroud, is because you're kind of seeing the skull, more than just the teeth, come out through the skin. It's looking like a mask. And the chief thing there you can see, you can just kind of start counting to see how many teeth they can get. But that's probably my favorite photo. I think that's pretty cool, going straight across from the teeth to the skeleton teeth. So, I think this is my last photo. Sometimes I stick other ones in there. So, kind of look at that one over on the left if you want, but it looks like you've got a person who's crucified dead, and the energy coming out. One of the guys on the team, he was a biophysicist from Yale University. He said, if the force it took to create the Shroud image would have been converted to nuclear energy, it would have leveled the city of Jerusalem. That's the power, you see, the energy. It's non-destructive. But if it was destructive energy, it would have leveled the city of Jerusalem.
What kind of
Now,
radiation was it?
Sorry?
What kind of radiation was it?
X radiation, and I'm trying to remember the other kind. X-rays, X radiation. And,
Gamma?
pardon?
Gamma?
Area.
Gamma?
Doesn't sound familiar. I used to know it. I'm getting to see now. If I think of it, I'll put in the conversation. And over here? Yes.
Don't we have a gospel account that talks about a head covering as well as the body clothes?
Yep. Used to be the question I get the most, and it's kind of fallen off, but I've gotten it the last few times for giving this lecture. And that is one of the neatest arguments for the shroud. All right. When it's first asked, it's asked like a critical question. I thought Jesus had a cloth. Okay, the word for headcloth is simply the Greek word for handkerchief. And we presume that the cloth was opened up and put across the face. It doesn't say that anywhere, but we kind of presume that it was opened up and put across the face. But the two places it's mentioned in Scripture, Lazarus, John 11, Jesus, John 20, both places it says the face cloth was rolled up and placed around the face, and the other one says rolled up and placed around the head. All right, keep that in mind for a second. The Mishnah commands that when you bury